Okay, so we're into May, and that means it's time to do an April monthly wrap up and what I'm currently reading. So this month, I think I made it through 8 books. So the first book I read, normally I try to do these videos, these reviews without any notes, but I'm just consulting my Goodreads to make sure I get them in the right order and I don't miss anything. So the first book I read was Blindsight. I got this book from the library, so I don't have a copy of it right now. Amazing book, super thought provoking. I did a review on the channel, so you can go back and watch that. I almost just turned around and reread the book because it captured my imagination and I just couldn't stop thinking about it. But definitely going to reread it at some point. If I do, I'll probably do a spoiler review of that book and try to kind of open up some discussion on such a deep, kind of confusing book. But that was an amazing book. Go check out that review. The next book I read, I reviewed on the channel as well, Venus Plus X by Theodore Sturgeon. This was a pretty cool book. Theodore has a different style than most authors back in this era, and this book was no exception. It had to do with this guy kind of being thrown into the future, into this like genderless society and the whole mystery and everything to do with that. So it was a nice short read. It was fun. And I think, like I said in the video, if you haven't read anything of his, maybe don't start there. But if you read some of his more popular works like More Than Human and you like that, then this would probably be right up your alley. Okay, next I read The Last Year by Robert Charles Wilson. I reviewed this book on the channel as well. I went into the library looking for Spin, one of his most popular books, and someone had nabbed it, so I grabbed this. And I'm glad I did. It was a lot of fun. It's kind of this time travel story that Robert Charles Wilson had a really cool spin on the time travel aspect that kind of took all the paradoxes out of that. So it was a lot of fun. It wasn't super hard, deep book. I almost read like a thriller. It was a page turner. It was a great book and great introduction to Robert Charles Wilson. So I'm excited to read some more of his books in the future. Okay, next I read a book called Ordinary Grace by William Kent Kruger. Now this is not a science fiction book, so I didn't review it on the channel, but an amazing book. If you're into coming of age books in the style of Stephen King or Robert McCammon, this would be right up your alley. I found this book, I believe, from Brian Lee Durfee. He has a booktube channel. If you haven't heard of him, I'll link his channel in the description. Amazing channel. He's an author. He has thousands of books. He's read almost all of them. He reads like a beast, and I seem to like most of the things he likes too. So I've gotten some really good recommendations from him. Now this book, it's set in Minnesota, like in the 60s, and it's this family. It revolves around this family, mostly this one boy. His kind of coming of age tale in this summer when all this hell breaks loose in their little town. Really amazing book. Check it out if you're into that kind of thing for sure. Next, I listened to a nonfiction book called Empire of Ice and Stone, The Disastrous and Heroic Voyage of the Karluk. Now, my wife had read the book about Shackleton's expedition a few years ago. I'm sure most of you are familiar with that. If not, look up Shackleton. They set this expedition. They went down to Antarctica and they were going to traverse Antarctica and then, sail the rest of the way home. And they encountered all kinds of stuff and got stuck out there in the middle of nowhere for a really long period of time. So since I read that book, I've been interested in these kind of survival tales from long ago before there was communication and satellites and all this stuff, and the technology they used to feed themselves and clothe themselves is just it's amazing what these people went through, and it's even more amazing that some of them survived this tale. Now, this was a long book. I probably couldn't have made it through it just reading it. So, as an audiobook, I thought it was perfect. It definitely described every single thing that happened to these guys. So, like I said, it was long, but it was fun. Next, I read the first book in the Masterpieces of Science Fiction series that I announced, Arthur C. Clarke, Childhood's End. I had read this book before, back in the 2000s, early 2000s, so it had been 15 years or so, and reread it and loved it just as much. So you can check out my review of that book, and if you're interested, check out my series announcement for the Easton Press Masterpieces of Science Fiction. Okay, after that, I read Dragon's Egg, Robert L. Forward. This was a very good, very hard science fiction book based around this life that evolved on the surface of a neutron star. Very insane book. Go watch my review. If you're into hard science fiction, go watch my review and see if this is something you think you'd like. It challenged my reading levels, but I made it through it, and now I feel like I'm ready to tackle some more good hard science fiction. And then the last book this month was The Island of Dr. Moreau by H.G. Wells. This was book number 2 in my series that I'm doing, the Masterpieces of Science Fiction, and you can look that review up and see what I thought about that. This is a classic written back in 1896. Just fun book, adventure, has some horror elements, a little bit of science fiction. Just a fun read, good palate cleanser, especially after reading Dragon's Egg. So that's all I got to this month. Work was a little busy. Found myself working some overtime, but looks like work might be getting a little light, so I might have a chance to take a little bit of time off, and the weather's just getting nice here, springtime in Montana, so might be able to get a little bit more reading in the next couple months. What I'm currently reading is Greg Bear's Blood Music. This is also from the Easton Press Masterpieces of Science Fiction, and this will be the 3rd book in that series that I'm gonna read and review. After that, I have no idea. I kind of was reading, I'm in the middle of this, let me see if I can pull it up. In the middle of this little fantasy book called Piranesi by Susan Clark. Got recommended it. I'm kind of struggling. I'm 30% in. I'm just kind of not really interested in it. Not sure if I'm going to DNF it or not. It's a very short book too, 245 pages. I thought I'd just blast through it, but kind of got me hooked, and now I'm not so sure. So it's still there. I haven't completely gave up on it yet, but we'll see. So that's all I got this month, and thanks for sticking around. Thanks for watching. The channel's growing. I'm loving it. Let me know if there's any other kind of content you think, that I might be able to provide for you. I'm kind of set in my ways in some things, but I'm definitely open for feedback and all that kind of stuff. So thanks, and we'll see you in the next monthly wrap up.